welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. You can call me H.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q. Happy new iPhone day, H.
Oh, well, I didn't get one, but if this is like some sort of a religious celebration for you, and a particular one where you would be giving out thematically appropriate presents, then, I'm all up for that.
Yeah, I actually, I burn all my iPhones, and they burn for 8 days straight. It's pretty...
it's good for the environment, too.
Yeah, very fuel efficient, the iPhone. But the one thing that I thought was interesting is Apple puts on this really big, very expensive presentation for these phones that at the very top end of the range are, $1,100 computers. These are not cheap items. And one of the ways that they showed off just how blazingly fast their new processor was a demo of League of Legends running on a phone. And I gotta tell you, nothing impresses me less in terms of video games than Riot's League of Legends. It's not because it's a terrible game or anything like that, but just so old and such dated visuals that it's hard for me to be like, oh my God, it can run League of Legends? I think a Chromebook could run League of Legends at this point.
And apparently Apple is still even sidestepping putting 120 hertz on their phone.
Yeah.
My phone currently has 120 hertz, and it's great. I like it. It does make a difference, and it is noticeable, despite Apple saying that, no human eye can tell the difference.
Well, and they say that, but their computer screens are that refresh rate or higher. Their iPad is 120 hertz refresh rate. And yeah, they say that nobody can see 120 hertz on the phone. But at the same time, today they were like, check it out. It's called Dolby Vision and you can record it. So I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too on this one.
Yeah. So speaking kind of from the opposite end of the spectrum, going from Apple products to Windows products, when I built my current PC, I built it with a very small SSD as its boot drive, as you do, because, you don't need that much room on your boot drive. You're just kind of installing the operating system, and presumably, it never grows or shrinks other than the occasional update here or there. But, it's you get a bunch of hard disk drives for the actual storage, the meaty kind of storage capacity needs. Yeah. And so I never really thought anything of it until I started using the computer. And then all of a sudden I noticed some programs only want to install to the C drive. And there's the whole app data folder, which is where, video game save games go, and where a bunch of stuff is just kind of dumped with no way of redirecting it. And pretty soon, that small SSD started filling up and getting kind of dangerously close to being completely full. And I don't even know or want to know what happens when your boot drive becomes full. And so I always was nervous about addressing the problem, because I always thought it's the boot drive. That's kind of my copy of Windows is stored on that thing. How do I even replace a boot drive? But I finally kind of muscled up and did it yesterday, and replaced my boot drive with a much larger SSD, with plenty of room left over to install a few games on as well. It was a harrowing experience trying to replace a boot drive. But, once you kind of get that reassurance that the software knows what it's doing, you're not the first one to have ever done this, then it feels better now.
It's interesting to hear you say that, right? Because it's funny. We have these big machines and we use them for years on end, and it's not until you open them up and go to replace one single part where you kind of have this moment of, oh, this is all incredibly fragile, isn't it? This could all come tumbling down.
I've made so many upgrades to my computer. Every single time I feel like I'm Icarus flying a little bit closer to the sun. Yeah,
exactly. But you're right. I actually, Windows has gotten pretty good at handling most of that stuff over the years. And in many ways, it's the best it's ever been. And in other ways, it's vexing in new ways that it wasn't before.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm rolling with a very nice, large SSD for my C drive. I was able to move quite a bit off of the drive that I almost exclusively used for games. And so I was able to, because that 4 terabyte hard drive was just about filling up as well. And so I moved over a lot of the big games that I'm just going to kind of keep installed forever. You know, the ones like Hitman 2 and Mortal Kombat 11 and games that were like, you don't finish them and uninstall them. You just kind of leave them on the system because you might want to revisit them from time to time. So I moved a lot of those over to the solid state drive. So looking forward to getting some better load times as well.
I had a bad drive replacement experience about a year ago where I think things through the Windows Store, which I know people have tough times with, like I removed the drive that some Windows Store things were on, and it was just convinced that those things still existed on some drive, that if I could just find it, it would be able to boot it. But lo, the games were definitely not on any hard drives connected to the system. But I think I found some utility or something that cleaned up the whole mess for me. It probably copied all my keystrokes in the interim, but not too bad.
Well, let's get to some video game pitches today. You are going first this afternoon.
Yeah, so today I wanted to bring to you an adventure game, but I want to play this game as maybe a spirit or a non-corporeal being, maybe somebody who's passed on in the afterlife, and you're limited in some way by the constructs of that situation. So you can go to any place, but you can only go to any place 3 times. So you can obviously visit a place once, see what's there. You might want to, Obra Dinn style, make yourself some notes. Maybe we give the player some sort of notation tool. But once you're there, your clock sort of begins, and you can only return twice. Of course, some mechanics to work out in terms of how to be a little bit more forgiving in that, but I wanted to start there.
All right, starting the clock. So lately, over the past week, I've been playing a new release called I Am Dead from Annapurna Interactive. They always do good stuff, and this is a game coming from the developers of Hohokam and Wilmot's Warehouse, which is another one that we reference from time to time here on Playwright. And I Am Dead, you play a museum keeper who has, before the beginning of the game, died. And you are essentially a ghost who can kind of go around various parts of the island. And kind of the interesting gameplay mechanic is that you can kind of, I don't want to say slice into objects, but you can kind of like, you can zoom into them. And as you do, the walls of the object kind of disappear, and you can start to see kind of like the innards. And so, you know, you can kind of phase through things. And, you know, it's fun if you're phasing through a watermelon, then you get to see it kind of transform from like a green circle into a, you know, green on the outside, red on the inside with little seed, you know, black dots kind of flecking in and out as you pass through it. But basically it's all about kind of solving puzzles using a kind of almost like a wall hack type of power set, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I was thinking about the idea of trying to limit the space. Of course, it creates a burden on the developer to potentially have to generate quite a few spaces in order to make the place interesting, because you don't ever want to just feel like, okay, now all I can do is, I've been to every place and now I can only be to every place again 2 more times. The feeling of maybe the capability of evoking things from those places, right? Maybe when I go into a place, I can note the objects that are there, the people that appear there, and there's interactions in some of these other spaces to summon those people or to make them take an action, right? If you can cut the power at the power plant, maybe the people at the, you know, the shopping mall, I mean, I haven't nailed down a setting, obviously, will leave and kind of disperse throughout the world, but kind of finding ways to push on the world or maybe even reset the number of times that you can go to a place or earn back your visit.
There's a game this reminds me of, but I'm not going to remember what it is, unfortunately, if it comes back to me. But it's one of those where you can kind of like, you can do a very set number of things in any order, but then kind of if like they're all kind of assigned a time slot in a way, or a certain amount of time elapses when you choose to do one of them, and kind of depending on which order you do them in, you'll kind of experience different things because you'll be hitting those, later activities or areas at different times. Different characters will be there. A real kind of day-night cycle time would have passed. But, we can kind of structure it in such a way that there's like almost like a puzzle, like an order of operations that you reach the ideal outcome from by doing things in this certain order.
Yeah, I think that's cool. One of the things I keep thinking about is I played a lot of Spiritfarer recently, which is a game kind of about shepherding some spirits into the afterlife, and in that game you spend a lot of time with a small cast of characters. I like the idea of maybe writing this game or writing some lines that really ramp up how precious the time is together. So maybe it's a little bit more, what is that? I know the concept that Captain Toad Treasure Tracker sort of invoked, which is the very interesting Japanese garden filled with rich with details and interaction and kind of things to look at and play with. And maybe, a return to the adventure game space is not about creating a lot more locales, but like Disco Elysium, really triple and quadruple down on the richness of each of these locales. So if one of the places is, for example, your old family home or something, this is your last few times you get to spend with your partner or your children, and for that to be very sort of melancholy all the way to saccharine, but a place where you could really spend an hour, but once you leave, there's only a limited amount of returns.
So being a ghost, are we the type of ghost who's going to be interacting with people, or is this more of a kind of wordless adventure, like The Witness or something like that?
I think if you wrote it to be something where the ghost can't talk to people or the ghost can't interact, maybe you get the sort of, I'm actually invoking the Patrick Swayze ghost power with focus. You can poke things and kind of move them around. But if you did that, I think it would be nice to make something about the narrative of the game about letting your loved ones know something or passing on a message to them, and only having a limited number of visits to do so. Because that could even create, by visit 2, you are able to pass on the message, but potentially you get the wrong one, right? So you could play with the dynamics of communication there.
So what types of interactions can we have with the world? You mentioned potentially being able to interact with objects, maybe being able to interact with people in some way, but are we seeking to really kind of affect the way that things are going, or to mainly kind of learn bits and pieces of a story kind of passively?
I do like the idea bringing in traditional adventure game mechanics and maybe finding out as you're now a spirit that there is this spirit layer over the entire world that you yourself can interact with and learn about and solve puzzles too. And maybe it's solving some of these spirit level or beyond layer puzzles that allows you to unlock further visits.
Okay. So what happens when you run out of visits for all of the different locations that you can go to? Does kind of every combination of pathways end up leading to an ending? And do you think that the actual reality is we can't stop players from just playing the game again with the information that they have from the last playthrough? Does that detract from it, or does it add to it? Are you getting more from multiple playthroughs and the information that you are carrying over, or does it kind of defeat the purpose of what you're trying to build?
No, I think one thing that sort of evokes when you ask that question for me is, you remember the ending of her story. There's kind of an in fiction character that approaches you and says, do you want to keep poking around her, or are you good? Are you done here? I do like the idea of at some point in the game voluntarily passing into, the beyond. So I think maybe to balance that a little bit, some mechanic where, like in Spiritfarer, you can kind of do these little missions where you're just trying to touch jellyfish, or you're trying to capture lightning in a bottle, and you do all these little things, and they essentially give you currency to keep moving and progressing in the game, but they're not really limited, and they're not really violent in any way. Potentially an exercise or mini game like that to earn back your spiritual energy that gets depleted from going to a place, or rejuvenating the spirit or will of a location, so that you can revisit it. And that way, a person has the option of kind of walking away when they're sated, or potentially going through and engaging with some of the minigame systems to grind up some of their spirit energy, or grind to increase, rather.
All right, let's close it down. Let's give it a name.
There is I'm going to name this after one of the first PC adventure games I ever played, that scared the pants off me, even though this is not a scary game. That game was called Amber Journeys Beyond.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it is very obscure. I'm sure it was played by 2 people, but it was kind of a horror game, and I do love the term Journeys Beyond. It feels like it fits this.
It's a good one. All right. This can be kind of a spiritual sequel in a way. Let's go to my pitch for the day. This might be a little bit complicated, but I was thinking it as I was upgrading my computer, I got to thinking about this. So how about a game that emulates the experience of playing old games on newer hardware beyond what it was optimized for? So you have to kind of simultaneously manage 4 windows with 4 different games, each of them with different issues on the new hardware. Like maybe they run too fast because your new screen can put out more frames than the game was optimized for, or those types of things. So just like the types of issues you get with old games sometimes. You can choose to break parts of your computer to decrease the processing power overhead, but it might have adverse consequences on the remaining games. So yeah, I'm going to start the clock there.
I love the idea of using this almost like the heat system in Hades, where where when the game is, if a game you're playing is running super fast, then potentially the enemies are just cascading at you at a blinding rate. So making the choice of, you can make this easier on yourself, but maybe when you're getting 2 FPS in Hitman, it's not going to feel so good.
Yeah. So it's, I want the temptation to be there to just kind of like grit your teeth and bear through like if a game is running too fast, like I was saying a few weeks ago, I was playing The Tourist on my computer, and it booted up with a message that said, like, don't play this if your monitor refresh rate is any faster than 60 frames a second. It wasn't optimized for that. I have a 144 hertz monitor, and so I just kind of ignored it. I was like, whatever, I'll just have it refresh at 66 or at 60 and cap there, and it's not going to be a problem. When I started playing it, the guy was moving around pretty quickly, but it didn't necessarily like immediately read like something was wrong until I started getting a little bit later on, be like, this is actually really difficult to play, and looked up a video and found that I was running it at more than like double speed because it was just having trouble. Like it wasn't able to adjust for higher refresh rate monitors. I have that experience, and there's other things like I played the Curse of Monkey Island, that's Monkey Island 3, before the Good Old Games release. It was, I actually pirated a version of it like many years back and played it on a modern PC at the time. And at that point, it was probably like 15 years old already. So when I booted it up, it looked okay for a couple minutes, and then all the graphics started going weird and all kind of like mixed up colors, and animations would kind of blur into each other and stuff like that. And so, I don't know if it may be kind of a lost art in the future as computers start to kind of like stabilize in their design and architecture, whether old games will still be as unplayable as games from like the 90s are on modern computers. But, you know, it's kind of a unique experience playing something that technically installs and works, but has like serious compromises to playability.
Yeah, and now we have almost whole services like good old games that are about putting in, I imagine, some amount of resources to restore aspects of these things. I wonder if there's like a tinkerer aspect to the pitch. I wonder if you can, in addition to breaking parts of your computer, if you can kind of dig through a garage and find an old like sound blaster and stuff to get the sound running again. And I mean, of course, these things have different parts over time, but maybe if you work or if you set a layer that's in somebody's old house, you can kind of assemble old PC parts from all corners. You found an old motherboard, and you found an old 56K modem. That's the only thing that this game will detect for Game Spy multiplayer.
There could be ways of kind of connecting, like finding backdoors in some of these games to connect to like an old version of the internet where you can order equipment that would have been like modern at the time of the game. Kind of like a Hypnospace Outlaw, where it kind of drops you in this alternate reality, late 90s internet facsimile. And so you can order things. Maybe you can even kind of like buy and sell stocks, like all of this with this kind of this idea that you are actually doing it in the past, but it is still kind of affecting your modern life. Like these ancient parts are being delivered to your home, and you can actually potentially prevent world events from happening. I don't know.
I do like the idea of also, even if there's no this sort of secret time travel mechanic, I like the idea of having access to, I don't know, we'll call it Junk Bay or something like that, or Junker's Bay, where you can go on and bid on items and, order yourself some old parts, wait for them to arrive. But you could then also introduce a passage of time. You could layer a lot of mechanics onto it, but I do also just like the idea of, when you say break computer parts, have it a little bit Surgeon Simulator style of just, okay, go around the house, grab a bottle of like grape soda and just start pouring it on the graphics card. See what you get going here. Maybe you can gunk up a fan or two with enough bubble gum or dust to make the heat system overheat and downclock.
I mean, there is kind of a fun, like almost like a PC building simulator in there, where you do have to have some level of knowledge about what the different parts of the computer do. And maybe that could be even a good way of testing it, like, or of teaching, rather, where you can let people break things, see what goes wrong, and then, they know in their minds how to adjust for next time, and it's all about finding that kind of perfect balance of playability. But again, you're kind of breaking the other games as you go. So you can either, go as far as you can in one and then try to break it, or you can try to play them all kind of simultaneously and try to work through the various hurdles that breaking and repairing various parts gives you.
I like that. And I do love the idea too of playing with the physics, right? Potentially the right strobe light could illuminate your monitor in such a way where you're able to see the proper frame rate of the game. Although the epileptic seizure warning is basically a requirement at that point. In terms of the thing that I think is interesting is having, if you have all the games and all the computer parts laid out in front of you, let's say we give you a couple graphics cards, a couple of monitors, and everything's kind of different power levels and sophistication. The idea of breaking things and also trying to play through all the games also kind of is a puzzle box in and of itself. So I think you have to have the array of options. What I'm worried about is breaking my computer in the wrong way before I get to a particular game and not having a chance to play a demo disc of everything, I guess. This guy actually kind of reminds me of being able to play a demo disc. Not the breaking stuff, but just a little game tapas.
I think you should be able to fix everything that you break without too much trouble.
Okay.
Maybe you have kind of like, you have a credit card and so you can keep charging it for new parts to replace the ones that you break. But, you're trying to finish these games with as small of a debt as possible. Kind of like golf. Like, yeah, smallest debt is the high score.
That's hilarious because I do love the idea of completely foolishly blowing money and then seeing just a massive congratulations, you played through 13 games and it only costs you $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
What could we do around like interesting breaks? Like, is there a way to potentially break the computer in the right way such that one gains a gameplay advantage in a game?
Yeah, for sure. I think you could potentially break it in ways. What I've seen sometimes is graphics cards, as they're starting to die, you get a bunch of like weird things on screen.
It's kind of beautiful.
In game. Yeah, you'll get polygons kind of extending out into the distance and weird shapes and colors that aren't supposed to be there, and things that actually look like they are embedded within the game world because for all intents and purposes, the graphics card, which is failing at the time, is rendering that game world. So maybe certain types of failures could actually produce, interactable polygons that can help you kind of cross ravines or can help you, in various ways accomplish your goals.
I like that. I also do like the idea of if there's any kind of physicsy aspect to it, like running super long wires, because actually, electricity, image signals, all this stuff actually do take time to travel across wires. So if you wanted to slow down a frame rate or a monitor connection, just like, okay, I'm going to go buy a 60-foot wire to connect to this thing, and then then you can kind of hack your way. So if you know kind of the basics of how some electronic stuff works, or maybe there's cool magazines like period appropriate magazines or something around the office space that you can read and get these sort of hints. That could be really cool.
Let's close it down and let's give it a name.
What do you call a broken computer? Or is bricked still apply, or is that like a phone thing?
Brick, yeah, that's something you would call a computer that no longer boots anymore. Brick breakers, bricked house?
Brick Astley. Bricked house? As in she's a bricked house. Surely this is already a game name, but what do you think about like FUBAR?
That's funny, actually. I think that works pretty well. Yeah, let's go ahead and co-opt that. I don't know of any other games called FUBAR, so I think we can claim it. Let's go over to our community and see what you all have written in today. This comes from our old friend Richard Radford, who says, Dear H&Q, so much of my communication with people has been virtual over the past several months, and I've noticed that I have been in regular contact with some folks who I hadn't talked to in years, while there are others who I used to talk to every day and haven't spotted since March. I was thinking this might make for an interesting game about the way that relationships evolve over time. You could start with you meeting a new person with a stable of random initial conditions in grade school, at a bar, online, etc. And then each time you log in, a random period of time has passed and you are communicating with them again. Sometimes the interval could be small, say a few days, and sometimes there could be huge jumps. Has it really been 2 years since we talked? The game progresses through the years all the way to the end of your lives, or the point at where you communicate with them for the last time. Each run could vary wildly. Maybe one night in college you try a drunken hookup with them, and then the next time you log in you two could joke about what a bad idea it was hung over the next day. Or maybe it's a game over and you never speak again. Or maybe the next thing you get is a text from them asking you to pick up diapers on the way home from work tonight. As far as format, there's a wide array of possibilities. It could be text-based, or it could have a mixture of graphical styles with in-person meetups, phone calls, emails, texts, letters, photographs, etc. And the various decisions you can make on how to proceed or respond. As you wrap up each friendship, you could be presented with a sort of shoebox of memories that the person and your relationship and what you meant to each other. Thanks, as always, for making quarantine so much more entertaining. Well, thank you very much. let's go ahead and get started on that one.
I love this. This is such a sweet idea. I didn't know we'd be talking about, and then of course the sequel to this game is my Afterlife pitch from earlier in the show, right? But one of the things that comes to mind as you were reading through this letter for me was actually the iOS game Florence, and how that game kind of really leverages the feeling of different interactions per situation. And some of them are, interpretations and abstractions of actual interactions between two people. But some of them are as simple as like scrolling through your text list and potentially responding in some ways. So I do like the idea of mixing that sort of interactions. And in terms of runs, I love the idea of having some of these AIs be maybe a little malicious, like have the sense of they suspect that you don't remember them and almost quiz you on themselves.
One thing that I kind of recognized recently is that, there's nobody that I'm closer to than my partner. Obviously, we live together. But as I look through my text messages, oftentimes she isn't in the, top 10 or so. I don't know if there's 10 people I regularly talk to, but like I'll look at our text message and the last one will be from like 2 months ago because we just kind of see each other at home. Right. Especially when we're not leaving the home very much anyways, like there's not a lot of reason to text back and forth. And so if I were to, if I were to be murdered and the police find my cell phone, and they look at my text message history, they wouldn't probably even necessarily pick up that she's my partner because there's not a lot of interaction going on there. So I do like this this concept in that like serious steps in your relationship can sneak up on you kind of off screen, things that wouldn't be communicated through text because people would be having face-to-face conversations. It's one of the things I really love about, to go wildly off topic, about the Dracula novel, is that every chapter is written by one of the characters in the form of a journal entry or a letter to another character or something like that. And so you get an account of things that have already happened, but at the end of each chapter, you don't know where the character is or if they're okay until you hear from them again, which is like such an interesting way to build suspense into a horror novel that is a novel. It's not a movie or something. Like, how can you build suspense in a book when, but you can use the format in ways to, in ways that like really no other medium can be used.
Right. In sort of that scenario too, you're in a world where you get to play with the idea of what information the characters know and dole it out to the reader in the same way that the characters know it, which is interesting. Maybe there's a way to portray that somehow in the game. I'm trying to think through how to create the feeling of, obviously you can just do it with transition, but like how to suggest that you might need to reach out to someone or that you might need to check in with them. It's almost like, do you just gently nudge and be like, hey, it's been a while since you've spoken to so-and-so. Do you want to text them, or do you wait for the active conversation you're engaged in to bring up this other person?
There are some games kind of like Emily is Away or A Normal Lost Phone, where you are kind of going through somebody's either kind of simulating their like AIM conversations, or you are going through kind of like a phone and all of the history that's contained there within. So it could be some setup where either all of these conversations have already happened and you are kind of like sequentially going through the archive, in which case, well, I guess we do want to maintain some level of agency and decisions that the players can make. But it could be something like that, or we could be, like interacting with an AI, almost like what is the game? I'm not going to remember its name now. It's a simple kind of one word, like Forsaken or something like that. But you are communicating with an astronaut who's stuck on Mars, and it kind of plays in real time, where he'll text you and you'll get a notification from the game. He'll ask you a question about like, I just came across a giant kind of valley. What do I do? And you can choose one of 3 responses, like try to cross the valley, turn back, or find a place to shelter for a little while. And then like real time will pass. And then like 4 hours later, you'll get another notification from the game with the kind of results of what happened in his next message to you. So I think there are different ways to handle this.
One of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of the interactions too, especially via text, we've all gotten the butt dial. We've all gotten maybe the, oops, this was supposed to go to someone else text message. And I do like the idea of the game finding moments to inject that of you get you get off a phone call or you see another phone call's coming in. It's a butt dial and you hear somebody talking, because depending on how you dole out the information or how you meet each person, you might not know what this person sounds like. You might not know what this person looks like. So the idea of revealing to you these things throughout a run, I even like the idea of his Richard Shoebox idea at the end to show, hey, this was your friend Ben, and you did this or this or this, or you could flip the script and actually do something that's far more, who do you think your friend Ben was? It was, and then you can kind of drag a photo and a character description, and maybe a couple life events, and it's almost a test at the end of, can you keep all these relationships straight?
Yeah, in a way, that kind of plays out like a dating sim or something like that, where, information about a character will be revealed early on that you're supposed to kind of like maintain as a way of kind of, simulating paying attention and learning about somebody and, them feeling heard and understood through your relationship. So what is the ultimate payoff of each of these kind of strands that you can go down, these relationship strands? Like, he was talking about maybe having like a shoebox at the end that kind of contains some sentimental objects, but is there kind of like an end game or like a wrap up to a story, or do you just get to kind of like witness the simplicity of a relationship and just kind of feel good about the story for what it was without needing like an elaborate bow to tie it all together?
I think one way to maybe package this is, this might sound sad, but I think the general course of human life is that we start off being exposed usually to very large groups of people in schools. We build networks very quickly. We meet people, we're friends. And then, as people have major life events, as they leave school and go into jobs, now your social pool is kind of really people that you work with or have worked with. And then you see people become parents and have to invest in their children. And the close friends circle for a lot of people is potentially always shrinking, right? So I do like the idea using this game in many ways to play with the idea of what it takes to maintain a friendship over the years. And sometimes it's as simple as, we do this. Sometimes it's just here's a midweek text or check-in that's beside the show as our way of saying, hey, I thought of you when I saw something, or hey, I got a question for you. And the alternative is like, did you call your mother? It's Mother's Day, right? And that's also an important interaction. So finding out the important interactions for the people that you want to be friends with in these runs, and kind of seeing that pool shrink and down to who you really maintained relationships with, meaningful relationships with, and kind of at the end, like who your quote best friends ended up being.
We're just about out of time there. Let's wrap it up and let's find a name for it.
Richard did not come in with one, of all things. What do we call our lifelong...
The term pen pal is kind of nice. It's not super relevant in a digital age, but I think the term has kind of retained some level of meaning.
I do like that. And And maybe in the shoebox at the end, you get to read a heartfelt letter handwritten from each of the friends that you've kept over the years.
All right. Let's wrap that up. If you would like to submit a video game pitch of your own, you can do so by going to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us @playwrightcast.
Special thank you to PROTODOME for the use of our theme song Hello World off the album Blue Noise. While you're listening to things, go check out the other great shows on the Cane and Rinse network, like The Sausage Factory, like Cane and Rinse, and like Sound of Play.
All right, to take us out of the show today, I believe that you are bringing in a redacted game. We have a 2-episode losing streak, I believe, so let's see if I can pull this one out.
I think maybe we could break it here. Okay, I believe in you. Here we go. This is a weird game description because it starts with an in-universe quote. So I'll do my best to put this on for you. Let me tell you, these ain't no ordinary redacted we're talking about. These here are redacted. The ones that gonna kick you in the nads. and they're the ones on your side. They must be from Redacted or something. That is a quote from Colonel Angus, redacted expert.
Okay.
Now on to some game description here. The survival of the redacted is at stake. Dish out revenge on the green redacted who stole the redacted's redacted. Use the unique destructive powers of the redacted to lay waste to the redacted fortified castles.
Okay.
All right. There.
All right. So we're getting green. Felt like an important detail in there. The enemy is green.
Yeah.
They stole something from the people on our side. Potentially both sides live in castles. It's kind of a medieval type of realm.
I mean, it says here redacted fortified castles. There is a bit more description, but since it's a long description, we'll see if we need to tap into it.
I'll make an initial guess that this is one of the Orcs Must Die games.
A fantastic guess. This is not an Orcs Must Die game.
So kind of further expounding upon my thought process here, there are what seem to be friendly units that potentially are unpredictable or are dangerous in their own way. Things that...
I mean, they're going to kick you in the nads, for sure.
Yeah.
But they're on your side.
Yeah, you don't want that. All right, let's think about how many video game characters do we know definitely have nads? That should really narrow it down. Question often doesn't come up in.
That's true. And here's a hint for you. There would be no way to confirm in this game.
Okay.
Let me give you, because you got one guess under the belt, I will give you one hint. It came out on 2 platforms, but nobody knows, or very few people, I mean microscopic, probably experienced it on its 2nd platform. So it's really known for one.
See, my second guess, I was kind of leaning towards one of the Overlord games, which I think I guess quite frequently in this in this section, which also did release on 2 platforms. I think it was just 360 and PC, but I know that while the PC or the 360 version was more popular, it has since kind of picked up a following on the PC, or maybe not a following, but it's been very, very cheap in sales. And so I'd imagine a lot of PC players own it in their libraries anyways.
I want you to break the losing streak. So I do feel I've got something pretty mainstream here for you.
Okay. All right. So green enemies. Are we looking at something that's kind of like medieval adjacent?
Certainly, I guess there are certain things one might say are medieval in their mechanics, but I don't know if I would call the theme or the setting distinctly medieval.
Interesting. So that makes me think about kind of like when they transpose medieval tropes into modern day settings, especially since the character being quoted is like a colonel or something like that.
A colonel, yeah. Who is a redacted expert.
Yeah. So a redacted expert makes me think that like whatever he's talking about is almost like a Pokemon, you know, where like it's a big enough part of this game world that there are people who specialize in its study, right? So
that's a keen observation. That's a very keen observation.
But the green enemies thing is the thing that's really kind of,
and they are unmistakably green. This is not a bait and switch.
Geez.
Before you take the next guess, I'll let me just read this middle part again. The survival of the redacted is at stake. Dish out revenge on the green redacted who stole the redacted's redacted. Use the unique destructive powers of the redacted to lay waste to the redacted fortified castles.
Gosh, so we are storming castles. Again, like this
storming might be strong. You're laying waste to.
Laying waste to, okay. This feels very Warcrafty, but I feel like that isn't medieval adjacent as much as it actually is medieval.
I would say the recognizable enemies, though, in that game do fit the description generally of green.
Yeah. I guess like Warhammer 40,000 also fits. Does this fit anywhere within the Warhammer verse? 40,000 or otherwise? It
does not, and I feel comfortable telling you this is not an RTS game of any sort. I'm going to read you now. Is that your second? That's your official second?
Yeah, that'll be my second guess.
Okay. Here is the last piece of description. Redacted features hours of gameplay, challenging physics-based redacted demolition, and lots of replay value. Each of the 63 levels requires logic, skill, and brute force to crush the enemy.
I feel like there's so much information out there. This has to be super obvious right now, and I'm just completely in the wrong frame of mind.
Yeah, okay. And it is it's a 80 on its platform.
Okay.
It is the 25th best game on this platform of 2009.
2009, great.
Okay. It is the 14th most shared game on its platform of 2009. But get this, H. It's the #1 most discussed game on its platform of 2009.
2009.
What was blowing up?
Interesting, 2009.
And I mean, this shit was everywhere.
So let's see. 2009, what were the big heavy hitters? Of course, we've already done 50 Cent Blood on the Sand, and the enemies weren't particularly green.
That's true.
This is probably about the time that Killer 7, no, that was probably earlier. That was a lot earlier, actually. And again, no green enemies. 2009 was the year of Brutal Legend. Doesn't fit. Bayonetta doesn't fit. Gosh,
this is shocking. Are you ready for this? This is shocking to me. I just Googled 2009 popular games.
Mm-hmm.
This game does not make it into Google's cards at the top.
Okay.
But I will say it is probably more popular than just about any of the games that do appear in Google's top cards.
Interesting. Can I have a 10 and a 0?
Yes. Yeah, you absolutely might. Okay, the 0. Overrated garbage. This game doesn't even deserve to be called a game. In my opinion, it just gets boring when you first play it. Horrible game is horrible. Okay. That was tough to read. Okay, here we go. A 10. This is a good one. With plenty of colorful backgrounds and charming protagonists and antagonists, which are weapons and targets in Redacted. It's one of the funnest, most varied Redacted games.
Interesting. So I have what I think is a pretty solid guess here. So
I'm rooting for you.
Just to kind of dance around it a little bit, because this feels like the kind of game where like once you know it, right?
Yeah.
So was the second platform that barely anyone experienced it on the Wii?
Oh, if it
3DS?
Came out on the Wii, it doesn't say it here.
Okay, but primarily a mobile game.
That is correct, yes.
All right, this will be the Angry Birds. Oh my gosh.
Well done. Well done.
Yeah, because they stole the eggs or something like that.
I think that's right. So, summary, let me tell you, these ain't no ordinary finches we're talking about. These here are the angry birds, the ones, I don't know why they wrote this copy, the ones that are going to kick you in the nads, and they're the ones on your side. They must be from Gallipadanapados or something. Colonel Angus, bird expert. The survival of the angry birds is at stake. Dish out revenge on the green pigs who stole the birds' eggs. You got it. There we go. Use the unique destructive powers of the angry birds to lay waste to the pigs' fortified castles.
Oh, wow. Good one. There's a few things in there that, like, hearing it unredacted are kind of misleading.
I would be with you. I'd go into RTS territory. I would be
a bird expert. Like, I don't get the sense that there are non-bird or pig characters in the game. So, like, it would be like me talking about like military strategies and calling myself a human expert. It's like, what?
Right. Also, like, studying birds does not earn you the rank of colonel in any way, shape, or form. The thing that took me by surprise is I Googled 2009 popular games, and at first I was looking through them. I'm like, oh, they think I mean like console/PC games. You've got Assassin's Creed, Left 4 Dead 2, Modern Warfare 2, RE5. But then if you scroll a little bit, Doodle Jump does end up on that list. So
wow, utter disrespect.
Yeah, I mean, the Angry Birds didn't, unless they're wrong about the year here, which I suppose
2009 is correct. Although it was December of 2009.
So maybe it didn't sales trend
post game of the year discussions. Maybe they kind of use those rules.
I didn't read the 10 review that said, "Simply genius. This is the best game for the iPhone, and it's a steal at 99 cents. I figured that would be too much of a giveaway.
What was the second platform that you had in mind?
PC.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just kind of looking it up, and I'm not even seeing a PC version on the Wikipedia page anyways, but
I'm wondering if it was one of those, like, also a Flash game or something.
Could be, yeah. Or, like, if you ever go to, like, the Windows 10 Windows Store, which I know that you probably don't as a Mac user, but, like, there's some real garbage in there.
I do visit the Windows Store. I do.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, Angry Birds, I user score 6.5. So what a...
That's one of those games that was so popular that I feel like there has to be something there. But like every single time I played it, I just thought like, this doesn't feel like fun. Like, what are people getting out of this?
I got many, many levels deep into Angry Birds. I did enjoy it. And then, because that 2009 was 2 years after the iPhone came out. So the idea of these games at all using touch and stuff felt so fresh and novel. But I do think Rovio maybe was convinced that it had a little bit more staying power than it actually did for a game. Heck, they made a movie out of that thing, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for listening today, and we'll catch you again next week.
Bye.